He said to all those living in Canada who care more about what's going on in Ukraine and the Middle East than in this country and want to import these conflicts and get us more involved in them, why don't you just go there and fight there yourself instead? Canada first. But I think Bernier is not only tone deaf here and controversy farming on Twitter to stay on the social media radar. I think he's wrong in substance. I haven't heard a single voice calling for Canada to send troops to Israel, or even for Canada to send foreign aid to Israel. I don't think Canada has done either in a very long time. This is one of the most up-to-date lists of foreign aid recipients I could find. I don't think Israel's even on the list. I actually don't think Canada gives Israel $1. By contrast, the Liberals actually do send, they've sent over $100 million to UN agencies that are embedded with Hamas. One is called UNRWA. It's a UN agency. Trudeau did that after other countries pulled out their money over worries about terrorism and just plain old embezzlement. And Ukraine obviously has received billions of dollars in the past year, including in the form of actual Canadian Armed Forces equipment. Trudeau says he sent $9 billion over. But the news peg for Bernier's tweet is obviously the Hamas attacks on Israel. I mean, nothing new has happened in Ukraine. What is the Canada First approach that Bernier would recommend for Israel that is different from what is happening now or what anyone is calling for? There is one Canadian Armed Forces jet that's going to Israel to bring home some stranded Canadians, and that's pretty much standard operating procedure all the time. I don't think it's a particularly big deal. I don't think that Israel these days even thinks about Canada. We're now known for Justin Trudeau socks and for bungling every file from India to China. I mean, here's what Trudeau had to say at the G20 meeting a few weeks ago. This is so embarrassing. Who would say, we need help? Who can we call? Trudeau. This is what he said.
What did Canada contribute in UK?
As always, Canada is a strong voice for inclusion of gender language, inclusion of Indigenous reflections.
Got it. So Indigenous reflections and gendered language. You know, he's not even a joke. He's a joke to us because we have to listen to him, but real countries just ignore him. The 5 allies that put out a statement on Hamas the other day were like super friends, the US, the United Kingdom, Italy, Germany, and France. Canada was not on that list. Look, I think what Israel wants is not intervention from Canada, but non-intervention. Don't lecture it. Don't try to stop it from extirpating the terrorists on the other side of that fence with Gaza. I think Israel's just saying to Canada, stay out, not come in. I think it's a very different argument from the Ukraine matter, where Canada is using unusual bellicosity in terms of language and diplomacy and the $9 billion in aid. I mean, here's Trudeau the other day when Zelensky was in town.
It's hard for the democracies around the world who are there to support their citizens, who are investing for the future, who are challenged with a challenging economy around the world, to continue to step up as Canada has with close to $9 billion in aid for Ukraine. But we will, because the cost on Canadians, on our lives, on our world will be so much greater if Putin wins this war, that we will and have to stand every single day until Ukraine wins this war.
How is that comparable to the Israel situation? Why is he lumping them together? If Bernier is talking about, and I think he actually is, the pro-Hamas hate rallies, then say so. There's a lot to talk about there. The Gaza Plaza Hamas parade that we broke the news on by videotaping it, rallies across Canada supporting Hamas, cheering the murders, cheering the terrorism, people talking about exterminating Israel. If that's what you're mad about, and I think you should be, say so. But the tweet, as written, it bundles the murderers and the murder victims together and tells them both to shut up. Bernier is a friend of mine. I've known him since before he was even a member of Parliament. I knew him when he was a vice president at the Montreal Economic Institute years ago, sort of a free market think tank. I think Rebel News has got to be the most supportive media company in the whole country towards him. We've interviewed him countless times. We've been supportive of him in many ways. We've even invited him to speak at our live in-person events. I consider him a friend, although honestly, I realize you can never fully be a friend with a politician, especially if you're a journalist. I've always regarded Bernier as courageous, especially during the lockdowns. I mean, I remember when he was arrested, we covered it extensively. He showed courage. I remember when he joined a lawsuit against the no-fly rule for vaccinated, unvaxxed people. But I think this tweet is a rare instance where Bernier is actually not showing courage. And here's why I say that. Because there's a lot of Muslim and Arab supporters of Bernier, which is great, including his past candidates, which is great. But I think Bernier is worried about losing their support. And he's already losing support to Pierre Poilievre on other issues. Bernier did really well when the Red Tory Aaron O'Toole was the Conservative Party leader. Under him, the Conservatives, I don't even want to use that word, they were against the truckers. They were against the convoy. They were for vaccine mandates, or at least didn't oppose them. Even for the carbon tax. Aaron O'Toole was for the carbon tax. Isn't that crazy? But now Pierre Poilievre is the leader, and he's none of those things. There are fewer and fewer differences between Bernier and Poilievre, and that means that the People's Party vote is sort of sliding back to Poilievre. I think it is already. I think polls show that. And Bernier is trying to differentiate himself. But back to the terrorism statement. To me, the past week has not been about policy A versus policy B, or this solution or that solution, or is the war being prosecuted correctly? None of that's happened yet. The past week has just been about acknowledging the most barbaric moment in a generation, deliberately barbaric, designed to terrorize and terrify and humiliate. It is a massive pogrom, a massive Nazi moment, like Kristallnacht. But in some ways, it's worse. I think the main reaction to the terror has been personal and emotional, not even political. I mean, this is just pure evil. No one I know, no one I've heard of, is asking for Canadians to send tax dollars or troops or even weapons to Israel. I think people such as myself are simply looking for political leaders to say, what happened is pure evil and we're morally against it. Just say that. How's that not Canada first? Instead, Bernier has come across as saying, you are wrong to care about this, just shut up or go over there. Because, and I think this is actually the explanation, I think he didn't have the political courage to say what he actually means, which is, you pro-Hamas supporters with your pro-terrorism rallies, you should go back to Gaza, because Bernier, who's normally quite courageous, didn't quite have the political courage to speak the unvarnished truth, because to do so would mean to lose, 10% of his party. So instead, he came across as absolutely heartless towards people who weren't asking for anything from him other than to maybe say, I'm so sorry for this atrocity. I stand with you and I stand against the monsters. Instead, he lumped the monsters and the victims together and said, enough out of both of you.